Hello, good morning to you. You live in a shoe. Remember how I said I was gonna vlog all day? Well, that didn't happen. It didn't happen, and not much happened today. I have had a absolute horrible migraine until about 2 or 3 hours ago. All day it has been raining. My head has been feeling like it's gonna burst open. It's just like been so painful today. It's been raining off and on all day long. I think that has kind of something to do with it. But anyway, let's see, what should we talk about this evening? Woke up today with this pounding headache and had gotten a message from the other trainer at my gym saying that my trainer was sick today. So she was asking if I could reschedule my appointment that I had today until tomorrow. So did that. I have my training appointment tomorrow, which I wasn't real unhappy that he canceled today, honestly, because I was not feeling my greatest anyway. But now I have to get up, and my appointment's earlier tomorrow than it was today. So I always like overshoot this area right here for this light, and then I feel like it doesn't turn because of that, but I don't know. So anyway, but I had gotten up early because I wanted to make sure that I was there on time. And I took the dogs out, and I just like, my head hurt so bad, and I was just standing there like watching them in the backyard run around, and I was like, man. So I went back to bed for another hour, and then I got up and went and got coffee, which I literally just threw out at the gas station when I got gas. I've been like kind of drinking on it all day long. And then I got up and ran a bunch of errands that I had to do. It was just such a boring day today. I have like really, like yesterday and today were such boring days. I always feel like if I don't do a whole lot during the day, like I'm not very accomplished. I was just kind of around the house all day long. I need to get a new like lip balm. I mean, I have 10,000 of them, but like a new nice lip balm. And actually Keel sent me that lip mask, but I want to get one like a tube. And my friend Valerie, she uses this one. I can't remember who she uses. But I need to find out. She said you can get it at Sephora. So anyway, yeah. So, and then we had our marriage counseling this evening, which went really, really well. And after that, we went to dinner at Cheesecake Factory. And Alex had his favorite, which is the white chicken chili. It's on the skinny menu. He loves it. So if you ever go to Cheesecake Factory and you're looking for something that is like low-cal and healthy for you, the white chicken chili, Alex swears by. He loves it. And I got an Impossible Burger because they have, I mean, this Impossible Burger that they have there legit tastes like a cheeseburger on the grill. It is so delicious. And just had a really nice, lighthearted conversation at dinner, and then we came home, and he was like, I'm gonna watch some TV and then come up to bed. And I was like, okay. I said, I think I'm gonna lay down. My head was like just pounding, like it just still would not go away. And I said, I think I'm gonna lay down for an hour. And so I laid down. Pee came up there with me, and then Alex came up like 20 minutes later. He's like, I'm so tired, I can't watch TV. And I was like, okay. So he came upstairs and went to bed, and then I fell asleep and crashed out till now, and it is, well, till like a half an hour ago, and it's like 2:16. I was like, is it 2:16 or 2:18? Problems of having all of this when you need reading glasses, right? And so I'm gonna vlog for a little bit, but then I want to go home because I'm like, the problem is I've gotten a lot of sleep now throughout the day, and I'm not super tired, but I need to be up early for my training appointment tomorrow. And yeah. What else did I do today? Talked to Tanya, talked to some of my other friends on the phone. It was just like a really lazy day. Oh, I finished a book I thought I was done with it, but I wasn't. I had like 5 pages left, and it was that Unlovable, that volume 2. So I finished that, and I started the volume 3, and I'm like a third of the way through it already. There's only 3 books in the series. It's this graphic novel series, and I love it. It's about this girl named Tammy Pierce. I've talked a lot about it on here, but I am kind of like, I don't want it to end. It was funny, Mel texted me earlier, and she's like, do you ever like read an author and you get so obsessed with it that you want to know like everything about the author? Yeah, I'm like that all the time. I'm like that with movies. I'm like that with, I mean, like I'll be sitting there watching a movie and I'll be like looking up the cast and who they are and stuff. Like, what was I doing that with the other day? I was doing that with something that I was watching the other day. But especially with books, I do that a lot. Like, I want to find out about the author. We never really did get freezing rain, and then everybody said it's supposed to be tonight, but it's 36 degrees. I mean, it's not going to freeze at 36 degrees, I don't think. And this is not like, when we get freezing rain, it's not like this. Like, we're getting like rain. It's more like light that it comes down. And, which I don't want freezing rain, so I'm fine with that. My friend Valerie told me that it took her son like 5.5 hours to get back from Chicago 2 nights ago because the roads were so bad, because of the freezing rain and all the accidents and stuff. If it was colder, this would be a lot of snow. This has been going on all day long today. So, yeah. I love rain. When I was a kid, I think I like rain because, like, my mom always liked rain. I don't remember my dad having much of an opinion about it, honestly, but my mom always loved rain. And, like, when I was younger, we would, like, go outside and, like, play in the rain and stuff like that. And, if it was like in the summer when it's like warm, you know, and it's like raining really hard, we would stand in the driveway and we would like wash our hair in the driveway because she thought that was fun. And jump in the puddles and all that kind of stuff. I remember where I grew up, I had a creek behind my house, and it would like overflow sometimes in the like in the summer when we would get really, really bad. Get really bad, what do you call it, rainstorms. And so sometimes it was just like this little trickling creek, and other times it was like this huge overflowing creek. And I remember like the day after a rainstorm, we would all go down there and there would be like, you know, fish and tadpoles in the creek, and we would like follow it. In the summer, what we would do is, it was weird, I don't know why, I don't know if this is like Indiana clay or what it's like, but like the creek bed was mostly clay. And we would follow it for miles and miles and miles, like, you know, 4 or 5 of us in the summer. We would just, like, that would be a real adventure for the day. Like, we would follow this creek and, you know, look for crawdads and stuff like that. I know this is probably hard to believe. People are like, Peter, you were, like, looking for crawdads in a creek? Yep, that's what we did. And looked for tadpoles, and it was fun, you know. We would just walk for miles and miles and miles. I had this woods behind my house that went forever. And we would do it in the winter too, and because in the winter the creek would freeze, and so you could walk on it forever. And at one point it kind of goes by this golf course. I think I may have told this story on here before, but I was with a friend of mine and I got my hand, we were like looking at something, and I was like moving what do you call it? I was like moving leaves and snow away, and this animal trap that had probably been there forever because it was like rusted snapped on my hand, and I couldn't get my hand out, like on my finger, I think. And he had to like go and like, he had to like run back through the woods to go to my house, and then my mom had to like call my dad. and then my dad had to come and get it. Was so scary, and I can just remember like sitting there in the snow, like in the winter, and it was so still. But in a weird kind of way, I wasn't very scared. Like usually you would think that that would be a situation where I would be really scared, and I can remember it started getting kind of like dark, and I can like see it in my head, like sitting there. Like my initial response was that like I was like terrified, you know, like, oh my God, I'm trapped in this animal trap. And I spent so many hours in that creek when I was a kid, or in that woods in that creek when I was a kid. We were always back there building forts and just walking on the creek forever. My dad actually built a tree house behind our house for me when I was a little kid. It wasn't like a legit tree house though. Like my dad, like if he was gonna build something, he always like went all in. It wasn't actually even in a tree. It was like in this cluster of trees in the middle, and it had a staircase that walked up. You walked up the staircase, and then it was probably 5 foot by 5 foot, and it had this huge what do you call it? It was like all open, and then it had this what do you call it? Roof over it that he built. It was really nice treehouse, and it was right where this creek would bend, and so we used to always play out there and act like we like lived in this treehouse, and that was like our settlement. And I don't know how I remember this, but we would like play out there, you know, make mud pies and all that kind of stuff. It was actually a pretty great place to grow up, you know. I remember this kid on our street that I was friends with. His dad and my dad were actually doctors together, and his parents had like this like actual like cowbell behind their house. And whenever it was time for him to come home, like they would ring this bell. I also remember like we would go to each other's houses for like lunch in the summer, like all of us, like, you know, we would hop from one house to the next, and somebody would be like, come over to my house for lunch today, and we'd go over there, whatever. And I remember his mom, she would make hot dogs, and I don't know, I've looked for these buns forever. The buns that she had for these hot dogs were like, do you guys ever like become obsessed with little things like this? Like, but as you get older, you like remember it like from 20 years before, and then you want to replicate it or remember what it was. But she used these hot dog buns that were fantastic, and they weren't like normal hot dog buns. And she had those basket things. Do you guys, you know, I'm talking about like those plastic baskets that you put like paper in, like if you're at like a bar or something, you get like, you know, loaded fries. But she would put like that paper in it, or like a paper towel or something, and then she put her hot dog, and then like chips, and then she would put like a pickle, and then we would each get like, you know, a Capri Sun or something like that. That wasn't what we all got at my mom's house. At my mom's house, it was a little bit more like bologna sandwich. My mom did make the best treats, though, in the whole world. She used to make... I was actually listening to, when I was listening to that podcast, that Lucas Cruikshank podcast, they were talking about food at Super Bowl parties, and I think that what he was talking about was this thing that my mom used to make. Somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. You take white bread, and you cut off the edges. If somebody knows what this is, will you tell me what it's called, please? Okay. Because I loved these when I was a little kid, and I can remember later saying to my mom that I loved these, and she was like, oh my God, those are so cheap to make, Peter, like that's embarrassing to me if that's your favorite hors d'oeuvre. Because my mom would make these, like she would have parties and she would make these elaborate hors d'oeuvres, right? She couldn't bake to save her life, but my mother could cook like nobody's business. She was like a good like cook about things like that, and Cornish tins and stuff like that. She could make pretty good meals. So anyway, but there are these things, and you take white bread and you cut them like the edges off, and then you cut them in slices, and then you take like a knife and you put, I think it's cream of mushroom or cream of broccoli, but I think it's cream of mushroom soup on it, and then you roll them up, and then you put bacon around the outside of them, like a thing of bacon, and you put a toothpick through them, and then you put them in the oven. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Oh my God, they're so delicious. They are so good. I was obsessed with those things when I was a little kid. I was also obsessed with, like, what is it called? Pigs in a Blanket, you know? She didn't make those homemade. And, but I remember my mom, like, this is also another little cheap thing that she would do. When I would come home from school, she would make... My mother ate like a little kid sometimes. Like, she loved candy. My mother, till the day she, you know, like, was in the hospital and could no longer... Here's another one that I always overshoot. She loved candy. My mother always had candy in her house. Candy and ice cream. Always had candy and ice cream in her house. There's like a crosswalk and then like a stop thing and then this, and then it's like you can't ever tell like where you're supposed to stop. But anyway, my mom always had ice cream and she always had candy. She loved candy. Not so much cookies, but she loved candy. And she always had a thing of frosting, like white frosting at her house. And so one of the things that she would make is she would make frosting on graham crackers and she would make cookies out of it. Oh my God, no wonder I gained so much weight. But you know what's so funny is that, like, my mom was never heavy. My dad's not heavy. When I was growing up, like, I was a string bean. Like, I was really, really, like, thin when I was growing up. It didn't hit me till, like, 9th or 10th grade. And then I put on a bunch of weight. And I didn't grow either. Like, you know how, like, a lot of people have their growth spurts, like 7th or 8th grade? Like, I didn't. I stayed short. And then going into, I think it was 10th grade, but it might have been 11th grade. I think it's 10th grade. That whole summer, I dieted. Like, strictly dieted. All I did was eat vegetables. My mom and I would walk every day. We would walk all the way down our street, past my elementary school. We would walk almost out to the junior high school, and then we would turn around and we would walk back. It was so nice, just having those moments with my mom. And, but I lost a bunch of weight, and I grew. That was, like, the summer that I grew. Like, that was my only growth spurt. Like, I never had a growth spurt after that. Like, I grew to the height that I am now, and then I didn't grow again. And I remember kind of being scared about it because I could hear people, you know, people would say like their legs hurt and stuff like that when they had growth spurts. That never happened to me. But it also wasn't like I went from 5'4" to, you know, 6'3" or anything like that. Somebody said on the video that I did with Chloe, they were like, oh my God, Peter, I didn't realize you were so small. I'm almost 5'11", I'm not that small. But in that video, like, it was so funny because on her couch, she was like sitting on a pillow, and I said, you seem so up high. And she goes, I always sit like this on this couch. And I was like sitting like down real low. Oh, if you think I look small on that one, wait till you see the Psychic Twins. They sit on pillows and all kinds of stuff. I'm kind of excited to see their video because I haven't seen their part of the video. And I haven't seen much of mine either. I wonder if we're supposed to get a bunch of rain again tomorrow. Like, this is enough of this rain already, and snow and ice and... But, you know, when you think about growing up, I mean, there were worse ways to grow up. In the summer, my days would look like this. I can remember I would get up and we would all run out and play, and I mean, it was just kind of a given. It was like in the movies when you see like all the kids like going in the neighborhood and playing. I mean, it was just like I would just get up and run outside. You know, everybody was like already out there. Or, you know, I'd go over to somebody's house if I was the first one out, and, you know, we would start playing. And we had a lot of kids in our neighborhood. Like, I lived on a cul-de-sac. But the street went all the way up. And I would say about halfway down the street through the cul-de-sac, and most of the parents were friends too. So, like, we only had one ever block party though that I remember. And which I think is strange that we didn't have more block parties, especially since our parents were all friends and stuff, you know. But like, all the kids would play, like, all the time in the summer. And if we weren't just, like, going in the creek and stuff like that, then we would play, like, baseball in the cul-de-sac. Or we would play, you know, like, dodgeball, but usually baseball. And there was this one kid that had, we would play hockey too. I don't know why, but my street was a big hockey street. We all played hockey, like in leagues and stuff like that. And especially the older kids played hockey. A couple of them, you know, played for like junior high and then high school and stuff like that. But I mean, obviously they weren't in high school at that time. Do you hear these like 10,000 potholes? It's ridiculous. We, like this one kid, his parents bought him like actual bases for the bases, you know, for baseball, and baseball bats, and I mean he had everything. And like if he didn't get on the team that he wanted to get on or whatever, he would like take all his shit and go home. But then I was friends with these two girls. It's so funny. I just had a dream about the one girl yesterday. Her mom and my mom. So the two girls, one of them, her mom ended up being my detox nurse in treatment. I've talked about her on here before, and I ended up working with her for 13 years. But the other girl who was, so she was, that girl was a year below me in school. And then I think we might have been the same age, though. I don't know why I feel that way. And then the other girl was like 2 years ahead of me. And her mom and my mom were really good friends till like the end of my mom's life. She's still actually alive and doing like all kinds of stuff. Like I was like looking her up on Facebook the other day and I was like, oh my God, she's doing so many cool things. So anyway, she's really an interesting woman. And so, well, obviously, that's why I had the dream. It didn't even occur to me. I woke up and I was like, I wonder why I had that dream about her, because I was looking up stuff about her mom. That was stupid, Peter. So anyway, that wasn't real deep, was it, to figure out? So, but there was like a summer or two maybe that I was like really good friends with them. And I wouldn't, like, we would play baseball and stuff, but like, we had a couple like really like boys on our street, and like nobody was ever mean to me. I don't remember anybody on my street, honestly, ever being mean or bullying me. I think partly because A, they had grown up with me, and B, because I think they knew their parents wouldn't tolerate it, and so they were always very cool about, you know, like, I don't know, being an effeminate kid, I guess, but they were always very nice to me. Nobody was mean to me, but I can remember the three of us. So right in front of my house was like this electric box, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, so there was like this electric box right in front of my house, and it literally sat almost like on the curb. It was like in the grass, but it was like almost on the curb of where like home base would have been if we were playing baseball. So we would sit there. It was like a little bit to the right. We would sit there and we would like chew gum. And I can remember, like, God, how young would I have been at that point? Like 8 or something like that, or 9, 8 to 10 probably in there somewhere. And remind me never to take this street again when I'm vlogging, because it's ridiculous as far as potholes. And the thing is, they won't fill these until winter is over, because they're like, what's the point? It'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we would sit on this electric box, and that summer was when I would wear, like, do you guys remember those terry cloth shorts that had like the white piping down the side of it? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's gonna stop, hold on a second. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, like those terry cloth shorts. I mean, this is very 70s, you guys. I was born in 72, so this would have been about 80 probably to 82, somewhere in there. So this was like early 80s. I don't know when Poltergeist came out. I should look and see, because that would tell me exactly, because that summer we all saw Poltergeist. I'm going to pull into this bank really quick, and I'm going to look and see what year Poltergeist came out in. I'll tell you why I know the Poltergeist reference, but I think I've talked about the Poltergeist thing on here before. And this is why when... Hello? No, I don't want that.
Cancelled.
Ooh, that scared the hell out of me. That's why when Bunny and Kay from Bay Nation go, Carol Ann, it cracks me up so much. Okay, let's see what year Poltergeist came out. Poltergeist. No, I don't need a definition of what a poltergeist is. I already know that. Poltergeist movie and it pulls up The Conjuring. Okay, that is a problem. 1982, so I would have been 10. So, okay, so this is when I was 10, and it came out in June, so that was that, it said, I think it said June 2nd, hold on a second, June 2nd or June 4th, because we went and saw it, like, I remember when it came out in the movie theater, June 4th, okay, so that was my, summer of my 10th grade year, or summer of when I was 10 years old, and, so we would sit on that box, the three of us. I mean, we thought we were hot to trot. You could not tell us that we weren't, okay? And there I was in my little, you know, terry cloth yellow shorty shorts with white piping the string. The reason I know that is because I've seen pictures of them since. But anyway, we would sit on the end of that with the tube socks pulled up real high. Do you remember that? Oh my God. So we would sit on the end of that electric box, and we would take our gum and we would pop it, and so we would take, like, you know, Hubba Bubba or Bubblicious or whatever, and we just hey better, hey better, hey better, and then we would, like, take our gum and we would pull it real far, okay, because we thought, like, the gum looked like, you remember when she comes through the closet at the very end, like Jo Beth Williams, and she brings her daughter Carol Ann back through the light, and it's like, oh, that pink material, we thought that looked like bubble gum. So we would, like, pull it out, and we'd like pop it like that, like that, we go, come back to the light, Carol Ann, come back to the light, Carol Ann. I don't know why, but we would do that. We, the three of us, walked up and down that street, and we thought we were such hot shit. That was also the summer that, I can't sink any lower, you guys, I'm sorry. That was also the summer that this girl that I went to elementary school with, her sister was killed. I think I'm almost positive it was that summer. Her sister was killed in a driver's ed wreck because of two semis hitting them. And I remember, like, it always stuck with me. I was, like, always so freaked out by it. And because I actually knew, like, that was, like, probably, well, other than my grandfather who passed away when I was, like, 5, I think, 5 or 6 that summer, before my parents got separated. I tried to clean my windshield tonight, and it's just like, every time I hit the light, it's just like you can see the... Does anybody know a trick? I bought this miracle cloth. I'm actually going to do it on my review channel, too, that I saw at the grocery store. It was like $10. And I cleaned off my windshield with this windshield cleaner. Or, I mean, with this sunglass cleaner. And it did a pretty good job, but you can see the streaks. That's what I don't like. So anyway, I remember when that happened, I just was so, like, it was like my first, I think it was like my first encounter with, like, somewhat of a contemporary dying, if that makes sense, like, and so it was so weird to me that, like, somebody kind of in my age group had died, you know? Our summers were so much fun, though, back then. I remember this one girl that I was friends with, I'm talking about, the one that was older. Her mom and my mom were, like, such great friends their entire life. I remember when they moved in, and it was a second marriage. Her kids were from the first marriage, but it was their second marriage, and her husband was quite a bit older than her, like 20 years older than her. And, it was like, I remember, like, my mom would be like, I used to sit in the kitchen and just listen to my mom's phone calls, and I was, like, such a part of, here it just started pouring down rain, and just, like, I felt like I was such a part of the adult world. And I remember my mom, like, when they moved in, just, like, went right across the street and, you know, took her a basket of stuff, because that's who my mom was, and they just became friends, like, right away. It was three women on the street became really good friends. And I can remember my mom saying something on the phone about people thinking things about her because it's her second marriage and she's so much younger and whatever, and she was real artsy, and she is real artsy and real different, and I mean, she's had purple hair for like 20 years, and I just absolutely adore this woman, and she just is real colorful, very creative, and I remember, like, I would go over to dinner at their house. Like, if my mom had something to do, like, my mom would arrange for me to go over to dinner at their house, and it would never just be, like, spaghetti, right? It would be, like, fondue. It would be always, like, some ordeal. SpaghettiOs. It would always be, like, some huge ordeal. She was so cool, and, you know, like fondue, or what was some of the other meals that we had over there? I can't even remember now. But just really cool stuff, and she just was so fun and so different, and I can see her and her husband coming over to my mom's house, like, when my mom moved into the condo, and she actually, when my mom moved into the condo, she, like, my mom just was sitting there, and, like, all the stuff was, you know, I was in treatment, and my mom was mad at my aunt. I can't remember why. She felt like my aunt had kind of forced her into moving, and my mom didn't really, even though she didn't want to be in the house that I had grown up in anymore, because she felt like it was too big for her, and she was all alone, and she was scared. At the same time, she, like, didn't want to be in the condo. She ended up loving the condo, but she didn't want to be there. And I remember my mom's friend came over, and she'd been an interior decorator for most of her life, my mom's friend, and she was like, we're getting this stuff up. Like, we're going to make this place a home. And it's because of her that, like, my mom turned the place into a home that my mom ended up loving, you know, and she turned everything around, and she told her, you know, listen, we can because she was like, I have too much stuff for this, and she's like, well, we'll get rid of what you don't use, but, you know, we can make this work in your house. We can make it feel homey again. And, I think that's what a friend does. You know, I think a friend builds you up when times are down, and, you know, and I remember they've had their disagreements and things like that. There were some things they got into arguments about over the years, and but they were really good friends. She was devastated at my mom's funeral, just absolutely devastated. She, like, wrote this whole thing out. Like, I had written a eulogy, and they would only, like, we couldn't have, like, you know, 15 speakers, but she had written this whole thing out about this thing that had happened with her and my mom. They were, like, having, so this woman was the kind of woman that, like, you know, she would pick up my mom, she'd call her and be like, on a Tuesday afternoon, and be like, do you want to go have lunch? And my mom would be like, yeah. And she would pick her up, and she was from southern Indiana, and she grew up in this very small town, very, like, you know, a la To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, and she made, like, all her own. She was an incredible cook. She made her own, like, cookbook and all this. I mean, she just was unbelievable, and unbelievable cook, unbelievable, just homemaker. She just was, I mean, very cool. And I don't know why I'm talking about her in past tense, just because I don't see her anymore very often, but every once in a while she'll reach out to me. But so she'd be like, you know, she would call my mom and she'd be like, do you want to go out for lunch? And then my mom would say, yeah. And she'd say, okay, be, you know, ready at 2 o'clock, I'll pick you up. Well, this one day she, like, picked her up, and this is what she would do. She would, like, it wouldn't be like they were going out to lunch. Like, she had made, like, a full picnic and put it in a picnic basket, okay, with, like, homemade lemonade in bottles that she capped herself, you know, chicken salad, you know, homemade little pies with meringue. I mean, she would go all out, and then she would have the blankets, and, you know, she would have flowers for, the potholes are even 10 times worse when it's raining like this. I just can't even see. And then, you know, like flowers in a little vase, and she would go all out. Well, this one day, they went out to this lake that's kind of by our house, and it's like, this church is right there. And so she said, like, you know, I scouted this out, and this is, like, the perfect place for a picnic. And so she took my mom out there, and they're on this dock. It's like this, like, walkout dock, right, behind this church. And like, my mom was somebody that was very, very scared, but often, and I don't know if you know anybody like this, but when she would get scared, she'd sometimes start laughing, because, like, that was her defense mechanism against things. Like, she'd get really scared, and then she'd just start laughing, like, oh my God, what is going on? Oh my God. Like, that's kind of what my mom would do, right? So, they're on this kind of, like, raft dock, and it dislodges from the edge, and they're sinking on it, okay, with their perfect picnic, and it's, like, going down in the water. And she wrote this whole thing out, this beautiful story she wrote. I should read it on here sometime, or I should read it on my Peterisms channel. She would love that. I know I have it in the basement because I just saw it not too long ago. But I have like this box of stuff of my mom's. It just keeps on getting smaller and smaller, because every time I look through it, I'm like, why am I keeping this? So I take stuff out of it. But yeah, I should read that on my Peterisms channel sometime. Do you ever get like that with stuff? You know, like, some days stuff means a lot to me, and other days stuff is just stuff. It means absolutely nothing to me. Do you guys ever feel like that? It's weird, isn't it? And I really never know when that day is going to come, you know? Like, I've literally held on to things before where I was like, on certain days, I was like, I can't get rid of this, you know? I just can't. And then there are other days where I can see that camera just wobbling. Then there are other days where I could throw away everything. On my kitchen counter, I have that Mrs. Meyer's hand sanitizer to bring out here. I have a bottle of it, lavender, and I don't know what I'm looking for is. And I also have a lip balm tube, both of which that I want to bring out here. And I keep on forgetting, and they're just sitting there. Well, I guess I don't keep on forgetting, I just choose not to bring them out. I remember the smell of her house, too. Like, when I would go over to her house, and her house smelled so good. It had such a unique smell. They used to have a boat in the Bahamas, and they took my mom down there. Like, they were taking their daughter on spring break, daughter and son on spring break. And so that was the year that my parents got divorced, I think. And I was with my dad. I usually was with my dad on spring break. And, I mean, there were some exceptions, but typically I was with my dad. And, okay, I don't know what is... Carly, I love you, but I don't know that... I think that this thing is helping a whole lot. I just can't figure it out. Anyway... So she went to the Bahamas. Oh, what's the city where Atlantis is down there? Nassau. They had a boat in Nassau. He and his partner did. Her husband. And so they went down there and stayed in Nassau for a week. Okay, my mother had the time of her life. The absolute time of her life. She had such a good time. She talked about it for years after that. And she had, like... So my dad turned 40. Was that his 40th birthday? Well, then that makes total sense to me of how old I was during certain ages and all that kind of stuff. So my dad turned 30 the year that my parent... Okay, when my dad turned 40, he turned 40 in August, and he and his dad had died literally just like 2 weeks before that. And I think it, like... My mom always thought he went through some, like, you know, midlife change or whatever because of that. I don't know. I just think that he realized his own mortality. And so he told my mom that he was going to leave in January. and he said, you're not happy and I'm not happy, and one of us deserves to be happy, and you're never going to leave, so I'm going to leave because one of us deserves to be happy. He told me that later too. He was like, your mom never would have left, and he was like, neither one of us was happy anymore, and it just was never getting any better. And so anyway, my mom went from like a size 10, like no lie. She for her whole life would talk about traumatic weight loss. Her whole life she talked about traumatic weight loss and how unhealthy it is, but it's a real thing. She went from like a size 10 to like a size 0, like that, literally like that. And she also said that she thought in the back of her mind it was her trying to get like if she looked better, she thought my dad would want to stay, kind of thing. And which that wasn't what it was about for my dad. You know, it was just he was unhappy, you know. They just didn't get along. So that following spring would have been when she went to Nassau. So it was like one of the thinnest that she ever was. And my mother was like, I mean, she was never a huge woman ever, but she would always kind of watch her health and her weight, because she was always very conscious with that. Which looking back is kind of interesting to me. I mean, there were periods of my life, of my mom's life, especially when she was drinking really heavy, that I think she was heavier than other times. Like, I mean, I look back and I think she was heavier, but I don't think of her as heavy, you know? And I think she would have at that time. Which is interesting because, I mean, the way that she spoke would make me wonder that. I mean, she and I never talked about, like, body dysmorphia that I remember, you know, or the way that she perceived her body or anything like that. But I would say the last 20 years, my mom wasn't so much focused on her weight as she was focused on her health. Which is why it's crazy to me that my mom ended up dying of this kind of like weirdo disease. So my mom, she had Wegener's vasculitis granulomatosis, and it's an autoimmune disease. And not many people a year get it, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. You usually get it after having the flu, and or you're sick. And then, but like, there was nothing that she could have done really to stop it before she got it, you know, and they don't really know how she got it. And what's so weird is that my mom would like, I mean, for years, she would call me up, and I'd be like, she'd say, I just went to the grocery store, and I got blueberries because of Dr. Oz says that they're really good antioxidants, and, you know, I've been adding 20 minutes to my walking every morning. I mean, my mother was somebody that was very, very health conscious. You know, you have to drink this much water, and you should do this. And she was eating a whole wheat pasta long before anybody was eating, like, you know, whole wheat this and gluten-free that. Yeah, I mean, she always did that stuff long before. She was always reading the articles and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, my mom was a long-term smoker too, and actually it was interesting because a friend of mine said the other day, well, probably her smoking contributed to it, and the doctor said that smoking had absolutely nothing to do with it. But what was interesting was that my mom started smoking like when she was like 16, but she was never, I mean, I don't know how other people would define a heavy smoker, but my mom was never like a super heavy smoker. Like, I think at her highest, she smoked like maybe a half pack a day. And for like the last couple years of her life, she would smoke 1, maybe 2 cigarettes a day. And what she would do, like, she would tell me, she would say, I bought a pack of cigarettes, because she used to smoke Monarchs. And I'd say, she'd drive all over town to get these Monarchs because they were the cheapest cigarettes in town. And I'd say, you're putting these rock gut cigarettes, and she'd say, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, I mean, okay, whatever. But you might as well smoke something that you enjoy, since, you know. So she would buy these Monarchs, and she hated them. She said that they tasted like shit, you know. And then whenever I would like buy her, you know, if we were going out of town or something to like the casino, I would buy her a pack of cigarettes. Like if we stopped at the gas station, I'd be like, let me get you a pack of cigarettes. She'd be like, oh no, don't. I'm not having my son buy his mother a pack of cigarettes. And so I just would buy her a pack of cigarettes. I wouldn't tell her, right? And I get her a pack of like, you know, Marlboro Lights or something like that. And she'd say, oh my God, you shouldn't have spent that. Like Monarchs are like $3 cheaper than this. I'm like, Mom, just enjoy it. So anyway, but the doctor said it had absolutely, like, nothing wrong with her as related to smoking. I mean, they did a full autopsy on my mom, and The reason being is because when she died, they didn't understand really like they understood what had happened, but I guess with Wegener's vasculitis, granulocytosis, like it either affects your whole body or it affects one area. And my mother died of kidney failure. Like on her death certificate, it says kidney failure because she was in, dialysis and stuff, because it had affected her kidneys is what had happened. And my dad said to me, he said, you have to have an autopsy. And it kind of bothered me at first, and he goes, your mother would have wanted you to have an autopsy. Okay, the camera fell again. And again, actually. So anyway, my dad told me that I needed to get an autopsy, you know, and he was like, your mother would have wanted you to get one because, you know, if you find out more about the disease or you can educate people on it or whatever, and your mother believed a lot in education and research, you know, then it'll be helpful to somebody else. And so that's why I agreed to do it. So then when we got the autopsy results, my dad sat down and kind of explained some of it to me. And like one of the things that came up was her lung capacity or whatever, I don't know. But something about the smoking, and it was like, it had no effect on what had happened whatsoever. But the last couple years of my mom's life, I would say the last 2 or 3 years of my mom's life, she would get a pack of cigarettes and she would write on it the date, like she would put on the date, what is today, the 11th? Like she would put like 2/11, like the date that she bought the pack of cigarettes, and then she would see how long she could make the pack of cigarettes last. And in fact, when she had died, because she kept them in this drawer, which is where I now keep my candle stuff, but she kept them in this drawer and it would just always be like right there in the corner. And when she passed away, she had been in the hospital since, okay, so she passed away in May, so April, May, March, April, okay, like it said like January something on there. So she had bought like this pack of cigarettes, I think it said the end of January. She had bought this pack of cigarettes like at the end of January and like hadn't smoked it again. But I also think, and I don't know, I think she told me that she really was having a hard time smoking at the end. Like she just didn't enjoy it anymore. Because I know she was having a hard time eating. Because at first what happened was she lost a lot of weight. She couldn't keep anything down. She couldn't even keep liquids down. And she would just get real sick. And she knew something was wrong when we were in Gatlinburg that December. Because she wrote in her journals, she said, I had bought her these really nice oranges because we were at the grocery store, and she, like organic oranges. My mother loved organic fruits and vegetables. And so I let her go through and she like picked out all these, you know, oranges or whatever and fruit. And later I read in her journal that she said, I can't even keep, you know, down one of these, you know, beautiful oranges or delicious oranges or whatever. And I didn't even know that she was sick on that trip. She didn't tell me. And, but she shed like 30 pounds. I mean, she was like really, really thin. And that was when they were saying that she was dehydrated. That the problem was that she was dehydrated. And they released her, I think twice, saying that from the hospital, saying that she was, because they didn't know. Although she had gone to another hospital first, and the other hospital had diagnosed her with Wegener's vasculitis, and they had all of the paperwork when we admitted her to this other this other hospital. But they ran tests and said that that wasn't what it was. So, you know, people ask me a lot. They're like, do you think that if you caught it sooner that, I mean, I don't know. I've wondered that a lot, you know, like, she didn't want to be at the hospital, at the first hospital, you know, she didn't trust it. And, you know, even though my dad and my mom didn't get along on great terms, she wanted to be somewhere where my dad was, and that she knew, you know, she trusted my dad. And even though my dad didn't have anything to do with the case whatsoever, she knew that, I think, she would have been taken a little bit better care of, you know. I think she knew that. She was worried, and she was scared. And she was real resistant to going back to the other hospital. So, you know, when my dad was like, I want her there, like, let's do this. And the doctors there were like all in agreement about that too. So, you know, I don't know. I don't ever really question things like that a whole lot, you know. I mean, I was in there every day. I never saw her not be taken care of well. I don't think they communicated well to my aunt and I what was going on, but I thought that she was taken, the hospital system was beautiful, she was taken care of, she was on dialysis, but what happened was, when she was at home, she was almost emaciated, and then they get her into the hospital, and they put her on dialysis, and she got, just really, really bloated. In fact, I remember calling my ex, and I said, because he didn't want to come up there, and it was it was when we knew, what was going on, and I said, you need to come up and you need to say goodbye to her. Oh, no, I don't want to. And I said, no, you need to come up there. My mother loved you. She adored you, and, you were a huge part of her life, and, you need to come up there and say goodbye, please. This would mean something to her. This would mean a lot to her, even if she doesn't know. And he was like, fine, I'll come up there, but I don't want your aunt and Caroline and everybody there. I said, that's fine. I'll ask them to leave. And they loved him anyway. I don't know why it was such a huge deal, but he did. And I can remember when he came into the room, if I start talking about this too much, I'll start bawling, and I don't want to, but for two reasons. Number one, it was because my mother loved him just so much. And number two, because my mother never got to meet Alex. And that's one of the hardest things for me in my life, is that my mom never got to meet Alex. But, that comes up in the psychic twins thing, so I have to tell you, just a prayer for that. But he came in the room, and I can remember he just was so taken aback, because my mom was always a very petite woman, and she just was bloated beyond belief, and I had seen her every day for 2 months. I'd seen it progressively get worse with the dialysis, that he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, she's on dialysis, and I explained this to you on the phone. I said, that she doesn't look like she used to look, and I've had so many friends of mine that have had cancer and other diseases, and I think it's really hard, when on top of having a disease, that bodies start betraying us, in how we look, and so we look differently because of the disease, or the medicine that is helping the disease to go away, whether that's chemo or dialysis or, whatever. And, one of the things, I don't talk about this on here because I don't blame it on this, but, I'm on high doses of Depakote because of my epilepsy, and, they wanted to change me years ago because I gained a lot of weight on it to Lamictal, and I hated it. As soon as they started me on it, I hated it, and I told my neurologist, I said, no, I don't want to be on this, I don't like it. And he was like, okay, he was like, fine, he's like, you're doing great, on the Depakote. So I stayed on that ever since. But one of the side effects of it is that it does make you, it increases your appetite, it makes you very, very hungry. That being said, I've also been in the best shape of my entire life on it, so I can't blame it on that, you know what I mean? I have so many people that ask me about medicine. It's interesting because they're like, well, you take medicine every day, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, does it bother you? And I go, no. I've done it since I was, the price, but, with insurance, it's not super expensive, but, there were periods where it was, and, I think I got diagnosed with epilepsy. It's 27 or 28. I think it was 27 or 28. I can never remember, but anyway. And You know, I know a lot of people that are like, I don't like taking my medicine for this or whatever. It's a reminder of what I have. I actually, when I've done my videos about epilepsy, a lot of people with epilepsy reach out to me, or a lot of people that just got diagnosed with epilepsy reach out to me, and they're like, I don't know how you're so okay with it, or I'm just embarrassed or ashamed, or I don't know how to deal with this. And I'm like, you know, I don't think we should, any of us, be embarrassed or ashamed of anything physically or medically that has to do with us. It's part of our story, you know. Like, one of the reasons why I wanted to do the video with my friend Allie is because ever since I've ever known Allie, she's always embraced being little. Like, you know, always. I can remember one of the very first conversations I ever had with her. I said, you know, I just want to be appropriate. Like, what words do you like? And she said, I prefer little person because I'm a little person. That's what I am. And she said, you know, it's a kind of dwarfism. She said, but if you use that word, people start looking at it in a different way. She said, so I prefer little person. And, you know, she's just always accepted that this is who I am, and I'm gonna live my life the way I'm gonna live my life no matter what. And I think that I've been so blessed to be surrounded with so many people that have had adversities. I mean, just being sober, you're around people all the time that have had some, you know, adversity in their life. That I think, like, what it teaches you is there's nothing that should stop you from chasing your dreams, no matter what, you know? No matter what. I'm like in my head, like deciding whether or not I want to tell this story, but I have a friend of mine that passed away a long time ago. Like, he got diagnosed with HIV. And at that time, I don't know what the drugs are like now, but at that time, there were 3 pills that he had to take 3 times a day. And it was like the cocktail. And this was one of my dearest friends. And I can remember, like, getting upset with him because he would say, I'd say, did you take your medicine? No, girl, I don't want to take my medicine. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to take your medicine? And at that time, Indiana had really good healthcare benefits for people that were diagnosed with HIV or had full-blown AIDS. And it's changed a lot, but back in the day, like, Indiana was one of the leading states for, like, help. And I remember we talked one time and I said, what's your resistance to taking the medicine? Like, we were out to lunch and I was like, dude, what's your resistance to this? Like, this is possibly saving your life, you know? Incidentally, he did not pass away from that drug, or from that. He ended up, sadly enough, passing away from an overdose, but, and not intentioned either, so. I don't think I've ever talked about him on here, actually. But anyway, so we were out to lunch, and I said, what's your resistance to it? And he said, you know, I'm ashamed of it. I'm ashamed that I feel like it's based on my choices and my decisions, and this is some societal bullshit. This is what I'm personally saying right now. I think that's some societal bullshit, okay? That, like, you know, certain people deserve certain things. I'm not about all that. Like, I think that's horrible to put on somebody. But the medicine to him was a reminder of what he had, and every time he took it, it would take him back to the action that got him there. And he couldn't do it. He could not do it. And he ended up eventually going to see a counselor and getting in a support group, which was great for him. But, like, he wouldn't even go to a support group around here. He ended up going to one in, like, a city, like, 3 hours away. Because he was like, I don't want anybody around here to know. Like, I'm so afraid and I'm so ashamed and all that kind of stuff, you know? And yes, I understand that's HIV. But I think, like, with all kinds of diseases, there's a lot of stigma attached to it, you know? And that I think to a lot of people, taking medicine is a reminder of that. Or, oh, I'm going to have to take the medicine for the rest of my life. And, you know, I just, you know, it's interesting because today I have a lot of friends of mine that, you know, are HIV positive and are living extremely healthy lives. My God, they look like bodybuilders compared to me, you know? And they're very open about it. And, you know, they'll talk about their medicine that they're on. And I think it's like one pill now, you know, and whatever. And, you know, they're in relationships. Some of them are in relationships with other people that are not HIV positive. And, you know, it's like we've come a really, really long way. And I think that we had to destigmatize it, you know? And I think it's important to not feel ashamed of who we are for whatever, you know? Like I did this whole video on my Peterisms channel about shame and guilt, and they're worthless, pointless emotions for whatever reason. You know, maybe you're ashamed because you're divorced and you feel like you didn't do a very good job in your marriage. You know, I've had friends of mine that say that a lot. And I felt like that with my ex. Like, we didn't put all the work into it that we could, you know? Or you're ashamed because you could have been a better son or a better daughter. Or you're ashamed because of this, or ashamed because of that. Or maybe it is because you have some kind of disease, like I have epilepsy, or other people, you know, whatever. And it's like, shame is a pointless emotion. It does us no good whatsoever. And I even said in that video, I said, if anybody out there can tell me what shame accomplishes for us, you know, other than maybe stopping us from doing that behavior again in the future that we associate with that. But like, I just don't like to try to look at things that way. I think that's real negative and sad. And, you know, I think we're more than all of that. Isn't that rain pretty? I sometimes love just to listen to the rain, like drive, or, you know, we have in our bathroom, I don't know if you can see this like in the vlog, but I've shown it sometimes, but in the bathroom we have a sunlight, and it's like a long one, and so when I'm laying in bed, even with the fan on, if it's raining really hard, I can hear it like hitting the window, and I love that so much. I just love sounds sometimes. Like just random different sounds. Like the windshield wipers and the rain and cars driving through puddles. You guys are like, Peter, you are straight up a weirdo. Or you totally relate to me and you're like, oh my God, I love sounds too, and smells, and have this app on my phone that, well, when we went to French Lick with my aunt, I forgot the fan. I tried to sleep by this app alone and I couldn't do it. But I should look it up. It's on my iPad, whatever, my iPad that I haven't used in forever. I had like a first generation iPad, and I don't even know that I know how to turn it on anymore, or where the charger is or anything like that. But I used to have this app, and it was like these things hanging. Do you guys know what I'm talking? If you know what I'm talking about, let me know. But it was like, it had like they would read like the visual imagery, you know, in the background. But then you could pick the sounds too, and it would be like thunderstorm, city. So you could like pick like as many as you wanted, but it would sound like a thunderstorm like happening like in the city, and you could hear like cars going by, or on the ocean. You could pick the ocean, you know. And then in the background, they would have these people reading, you know, and it would be like, you are floating down the river. All of your troubles are floating away with you. Leave it all behind. Don't think about a single problem of your days. Life is what you make it. And I mean to tell you, I would be out like in 5 minutes. That's probably why I should listen to ASMR, isn't it? But I would like fall asleep and I had these big headphones on and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd still have the headphones on. Oh my God. But you know what's so funny? I don't know why I just thought of this, but like, I used to take melatonin to fall asleep. Like I would take like the lowest milligram melatonin and it always helped me. I don't think I have taken melatonin. God, I don't even know the last time I took it. I don't even know if we have any. I mean, I bet it's been over a year. I have no idea. I honestly have no idea the last time I took it. But I will say this. Since I changed up my whole regimen of like saying my prayers before I go upstairs, my alarm is already set right now for tomorrow. Setting my alarm, I go in, I plug in my phone, I go into the bathroom, I wash my face, I do the hydrating mask, I do all that kind of stuff, the lip mask, and then I go lay down and like I don't look at my phone for like, 20 minutes, 30 minutes before I lay down. And that has really, really helped me a lot. Just like that whole like relaxing process that I go through. I don't know, maybe it's that like my mind is so relaxed before I actually lay down. I try not to think about a whole lot of deep stuff, I just kind of like sit there. And I think the other thing is that the mask is like so cooling. And so when I'm laying there and with the fan on, I can feel it, in my face, and I can smell it, and it smells so nice. And I think it just like naturally I just fall asleep. Because it doesn't take me any time really to fall asleep. I mean, there are still nights where it takes me forever and I'm like in my head, but not very often anymore, Speaking of sleep, I think that I'm going to go home and get this video up and go to bed. So I'm going to let you guys go. I love you. I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.